All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone, if you are on the East Coast, and good morning if you are on the West Coast or somewhere in between. Thanks for being here for today's Bloomerang webinar involving your board members in fundraising from day one. And my name is Stephen Shattuck, and I am the Chief Engagement Officer over here at Bloomerang, and I'll be moderating today's discussion as always. And just a couple of housekeeping items for you. Just want to let you all know that we are recording this presentation, and I'll be sending out the recording as well as the slides once again later this afternoon. So if you haven't gotten the slides yet, or maybe you want to watch the recording or share it with a friend, you'll be able to do that. Just look for an email from me in just a couple hours after we conclude here today. And as you are listening today, please feel free to use that chat box right there on your webinar screen. We're going to try to save as much time as possible at the end for Q&A, so do not be shy at all about sending your questions and comments during the entire hour. We'll try to get to as many as we can. You can also do the same thing on Twitter. You can use the hashtag Bloomerang or send us a message right at @BloomerangTech. And one technical note, these webinars are usually only as good as your own internet connection, unfortunately. So if you're listening to the audio through your computer speakers, and if you have any trouble, usually it's a little bit better by phone, we have found throughout these webinars. If you have a phone nearby and you don't mind dialing in for the audio that way, would definitely recommend you do that if you have any trouble. There is an email, or there is a phone number that you can use in the email from Ready Talk that went out about an hour ago today. And if you're new to Bloomerang, if this is your first Bloomerang webinar, I just want to say a special hello to you folks. We do these webinars just about every Thursday afternoon. We bring on a great guest like Kathy to give an educational presentation. But beyond that, our core business is donor management software. So if you're interested in that, or maybe thinking about switching from your current provider, or maybe just want to check us out, go to our website. You can even watch a quick video demo and see the software in action. But for now, I am super excited to introduce today's guest. She is Kathy Wright. Hey, Kathy, how's it going?
Hey, Stephen. It's going well. Thank you.
Thanks for being here. We love your organization. This is great fun to have you. First time webinar presenter for us, but not a stranger to Bloomerang at all. And Kathy, I just want to brag on you for a little bit before I hand things over to you, because I know you're going to talk a lot more about yourself. But if you don't know Kathy, she is the COO over at the Institute for Conversational Fundraising. And if you're not following ICF, definitely want to check that out. They put on a lot of great workshops and trainings and a lot of great content that you'll find valuable. She is also a certified professional coach and an Energy Leadership Index Master Practitioner. She has over 30 years of experience, having served as an executive director, a development director, and even board president and board committee chair. She's been consulting since '95, and in 2001, she co-founded her own training firm. So definitely someone with a lot of experience, and you're definitely going to see that unfold in her presentation. So I'm going to pipe down and turn it over to you, Kathy. Take it away.
Hey, thanks, Stephen, and good morning. I am so happy to be here today. I get to talk about two of my favorite topics. First of all, helping boards become more effective, and of course, fundraising. And as I said earlier, I'm just really grateful to be able to talk today, and really glad to be here with you all. So welcome. Happy spring. You can see that little picture there. I'm a proud granny, and so I like to use pictures of my granddaughter whenever I do presentations like this. This is from a few years ago. She enjoys this warm weather here in Oklahoma. And really, I hope wherever you are that spring has sprung and you're warming up, and that the trees are budding like they are here in Oklahoma, which I think is contributing to some of our respiratory problems. But we still like to see the flowers and the plants and everything in the new growth of spring. But speaking of new growth, hopefully after today, you'll be able to kind of grow your board just a little bit more to be more helpful with your fundraising efforts. And so we will talk today about how to involve your board members in fundraising using a conversational approach, which of course you would expect from the Institute for Conversational Fundraising. A little bit about me. Thank you, Stephen, for that introduction. But as you'll see, a lot of the things that I have been involved with and that I do have to do with communication. And I don't even have on here the 20-plus years I've spent with Toastmasters, which is an organization that provides leadership and communication training. But in communication, of course, speaking and listening are important. And when we talk about communicating with donors or with our board members, listening is the most important part of the communication equation. Of course, I've experienced, as I'm sure all of you have, the really exciting results that happen when you have good communication. And we all have seen what happens when communication breaks down. So hopefully the good communication processes that we'll talk about today will help you as you are working with your board members. Let's look at the outline for today. We will talk about 3 different areas. The energetic approach, or in other words, your own mindset. And this comes from my coach training, which we'll talk about, of course, when we get into it. Then what kind of planning and preparation do you need to do before you have that conversation with your board member about how they can be involved in fundraising? And then finally, what are just the exact steps you need to take to then involve your board member at their highest level of involvement in fundraising for your organization? So let's do a poll right now, and you should see on your screen here in just a minute where you can select where you are currently with your board member involvement in fundraising. So if you'll highlight the first little dot that comes up, that means that all of your board members are fully involved in fundraising in your organization. And then the next one is some of your board members are fully involved. The next, number 3, is 1 or 2 of our board members are involved with fundraising. And then finally, none of our board members are involved with fundraising. So I'll give you a minute as you're filling that in, and we'll see how people respond as far as involvement. And as the responses are coming in, we have, it looks like a few of you have all of your board members involved in fundraising, and that's fantastic. Highly unusual, I might add. The highest percentage here right now is that some of our board members are involved in fundraising, and the next highest is 1 or 2. There are a few that say that none of our board members are involved in fundraising. I would say it's about, let's see, maybe 15%. So pretty typical. And let's see. Okay, we do have the results, and hopefully all of you can see those results as to where you are currently with your board member involvement. So hopefully we can talk about ways that you can get even more of your board members involved today. And so why do we have that kind of a response from our board members when we talk about fundraising? And, you know, there are really several reasons for that. First of all, board members don't really know what it means to be, quote, involved in fundraising. What does that really mean to them? It might be that their impression of fundraising is hitting up their friends, which, when you think of it that way, is really not all that appealing. Another reason might be that they've been conditioned over time to think, as many of us have, that fundraising is things like selling raffle tickets or popcorn or wrapping paper or whatever you're selling, or that fundraising is all about those special events and all that incredible work that goes into putting on a gala. Or, and many of you are probably dealing with this type of mentality, they believe that that's why they hired staff, right? That's why you're on board. You're there to, quote, handle the fundraising. So those are some of the reasons why board, kind of what their mentality is as they're thinking about fundraising. And what usually happens when we want to involve board members in fundraising? If we're here in a board meeting and somebody like maybe the executive director or the development director stands up and announces that board members are expected to help with fundraising. And so people kind of put their heads down and maybe look sidelong at their neighbor and see what's happening, and everybody kind of nods. But they don't really commit to anything specific. Or here's another common thing that happens. They pass out an index card, right? And everybody's asked to give us 5 names of people we can ask for money. So what's going through their minds at that point? Well, they're thinking about, okay, who can I put down who owes me because they gave my name to their organization? Or else, who can I put down who won't get mad at me if I put their name down? Or if I put their name down, I figure they're going to put my name down whenever their organization is looking for names of people to ask for money. And so I call this kind of a vicious cycle of distaste. And it's no wonder that board members don't want to be involved in fundraising, because when you put it that way, it just doesn't really sound like it's going to be a pleasant experience. But what we talk about today is really a different approach, and it really encourages individual board members to participate at their own personal highest level of involvement for your organization. And, really that's a win-win for everybody. So we're talking about the energetic approach to board involvement. And as I talked about communication, better communication leads to better understanding, which leads to board members becoming engaged in fundraising, which means, of course, greater success in fundraising, and that's what we all want. So first of all, let's just talk a little bit about when we talk about the board. And of course, while the board in their governing role makes decisions as an entire group, in reality, of course, they're all individuals. And we kind of tend to lump them together as board members. But let's talk about how to work with each one of them individually. And that way, you'll have much greater success. And speaking of success, here at the Institute for Conversational Fundraising, we define success in fundraising as helping donors make a well-informed decision. And so by the end of today, you'll be able to help board members make a well-informed decision about how they want to be involved in fundraising. So they won't be assuming or guessing or wondering what it is they're supposed to do. They will be informed and will be able to make that decision. And to start out, I want to first speak to you who are here who want to help board members become more involved in fundraising. And the first thing that you need to work on is your own mindset as you approach that idea of board member involvement. And to do that, we're going to talk about some five levels of energy. There are actually 7 levels of energy, but today we're just going to look at 5 because they're particularly appropriate to our topic. And as we look at each one of these levels, they each have a core thought and a core belief. Excuse me, just a minute. Little residual there. So as we look at these, there are 5 levels. The core thought of level 1 is victim. I lose is the belief. Level 2 is fighter. I win and you lose. Level 3 is a rationalizer. I win and I hope you do too. Level 4 is caregiver. You win And level 5 is an opportunist where we both win. And of course, that's where we want to end up. But let's look at these 5, break them down, the 5 levels of energy for each level, how we look at board member involvement. So if we're at a level 1 mindset right now, it's I lose. And the idea is that excuse me, our board members won't help with fundraising, right? So why would we even bother asking them? So the level 2 is the conflict, the fighter, right? And so we're going to make them do something. The least they can do is give us 5 people to contact, right? Or else they're off the board. We need to replace them. So that's kind of that fighter mentality. The I win and hope you do too is that, they need to do something. I know they probably won't like it, but they need to do something. The level 4 caregiver mindset, you win, means that, poor board members, I know you don't like fundraising, so we'll let you off the hook. It's okay if you don't raise money for us. And in a way, that kind of lets us off the hook too, because we don't have to do the work involved that's necessary to really get those board members fully engaged. So at level 5, it's the opportunist, and we both win. Let's work together. Let's see where you're comfortable and how I can equip you to do a better job at fundraising. So Stephen, let's do another poll here. And looking at those 5 levels of energy, victim, fighter, rationalizer, caregiver, opportunist, where would you say your current mindset is toward board members and involving them in fundraising? So here is the poll, and you can put in your own response there. While I take a drink of water. And we have a few at the level 1 and level 2. Most people are at the higher levels of energy. Pardon me. A good place to be. The last time I gave this presentation, I had one executive director, her name's Melissa. She came up to me and she said she had an aha moment because she realized that she was in this victim mentality regarding her board members, and she was really excited to see that there might be a different way to look at that and to open her mind really to a different possibility. So hopefully some of you are looking at your own mindset and thinking, there might be a different way to look at this as I work to approach my board members in fundraising. So here's my big question. What if you approached your board members' involvement in fundraising the same way you visited with major donors? So think about that. In other words, have a conversation about it. So assuming you have the right people on your board, which they truly have that potential with their connections to make a big difference in your fundraising results, then they deserve to be approached similarly to the way that we use conversational fundraising with donors. So thinking about that and approaching them in a different way really can help change your mindset. And when you do approach your donors in this way, of course, just like major donors, the first thing you need to do is to prepare for the visit, just like you do with major donors. So our next area is planning and preparation. And take one more sip of water here. All right, so let's talk about what happens when we usually ask a board member for a gift. Again, we might stand up in a meeting and just announce that their gift or their pledge is due by such and such a date. Or maybe our onboarding process has in the expectations, excuse me, in their expectations of service that a yearly gift is expected from their personal financial resources as part of their board service. So that might be a part of what you do. There's usually not a lot of conversation involved, right? So a lot of assumptions and guessing takes place. So the first thing you do before you want to involve your board members in fundraising is to ask them for their gift in the same way you would approach a major donor. And you have a lot of benefits by doing your fundraising this way with your board members. Not only will it usually result in a larger gift from your board member, it also kind of informs them experientially about the process that you use when you ask major donors for gifts. So now they know what the people they're connecting you with will experience. And really, this is so important because when they're treated well as a prospective donor, these board members, they'll be much more likely to want to refer other people to have that same kind of experience. So hopefully that makes sense to you. So here we are. We've asked the board members for their own gift, and now we're approaching their involvement in fundraising from the mindset of this is an opportunity for both of us. So what's next? So the first thing you want to do, just like you would do when you're talking to a major donor, is to make the case for board involvement in fundraising. Make the case for the project. That's what your project is, involving board members in fundraising. So give some thought to these questions. Why do you need board members involved in fundraising for your organization? How does their involvement help your organization? Think about what specifically do you want them to do instead of a general, we need you to be involved in fundraising. Think about some of the specifics. So build the case just as you would a case for support for your organization. Make sure that as you're building this case, it's focused on the board member. It shows what your organization needs. It shows the gap, why their involvement is important, and what their help will accomplish for your organization. So making the case is the first step. Outline, again, specifically, and then next, who should be the person who does the asking, just as you would with a major gift request, is think about who is the right person to ask for a gift in that case. Here, who is the right person to ask for this board member involvement? Maybe it's your board chair. Maybe it's the development chair on your board. Maybe it's your executive director. Maybe it's your development director. Whoever it is, decide who is the right person to sit down with that board member to ask. So when you develop your case statement, you're talking about what the need is and why their health is so critical. I think I got a little ahead of myself here. All right, here we are. Who does the asking? So that leads us to the actual ask when we're asking for board member involvement. What are the steps? And when you're asking for their involvement, one thing to keep in mind, assure them from the very beginning, I'm not going to ask you to do anything that I haven't trained you to do. And this is important because board members are typically, successful people out in the world, in the community, and they may be a little uncertain about board service, especially about fundraising. And so knowing that you're going to train them on what they need to do, once they're trained, they can take it away. And what you may want to say is, especially if you're going to be doing something a little bit different than other boards they've served on, you might say something like, we do things a little differently than other boards you've served on, so I train everyone. That gets you out of the person who says, I know what to do, you don't have to train me. And it relieves the person who is intimidated by the thought but's willing to learn. So you cover all your bases there when you make sure that you're going to train them in what you need them to do for fundraising for your organization. So the first step is, of course, to arrange for the meeting. When you're in the meeting, you present the case that you've already prepared, show the involvement chart that we'll see in just a minute, and then, of course, ask for their level of involvement. What is the highest level that they can be involved with? And then follow through with their wishes. If there's something they need in the area of training, follow through with it. If there's something they need, literature or whatever it is, follow through with whatever it is they need, and you'll be much more successful. All right, so here's our board member involvement chart. And it just looks very similar to a gift range chart when you're looking at a request for major gifts, where you have the smaller number of gifts are at the high end of the chart and the larger number of gifts are at the bottom. It's very similar to that. As we go through, you'll see how the involvement gets to be more and more donor-centric as we get to the top. So the lowest level of board member involvement would be the minimum fundraising involvement, which is to make a personal financial contribution every year and to lend their name to appeals. Now, this is something that is many times written into your board member commitment letter. And so essentially at this level, pretty much all board members are involved in fundraising. And then our next level is to actively attend events. This is your gala events, cultivation events, appreciation events. And sometimes organizations have this particular involvement as part of their commitment letter as well, where you're signing a commitment to actively attend events. So, for example, it might be in there that you're hosting a table at a gala, but you might also, at this point, you want to specifically tell them what is expected by actively attend. What does that mean? And our friend Tony Wisely calls it meaningful mingling. Let me just say that again since I have a little bit of a cold. Meaningful mingling. So this is where board members have a specific purpose during a gala event. So maybe you want to equip them with the task of asking each person at their table, what brings you here this evening? What is it about our organization that really touches your heart? And then equip them to listen for the responses and then give them a way to immediately afterward record them and get them back to you so that you can follow up with people. So the point here is to equip your board members to be a little more strategic and a little more intentional about what they're doing at events rather than just being a host at a party. And, board members will be happy to be equipped in that way. But, these are people who make things happen really in their own world, and so just giving them a little bit of guidance will give you a lot of results by equipping them in that way. And so just as an aside, talking about events, one of the reasons you want to equip board members in this way, because the most important thing that happens at events is what happens after the event, right, in the fundraising world. And, of course, that's not a topic for us to get into today, but if you are going to be in San Francisco, and Stephen and I talked about this earlier at the AFP International Conference in just a little over a week here, plan to attend Kent Stroman's session on Monday to find out really how to leverage your special events. He's given a great talk on that at AFP in San Francisco. All right, so the next level is to speak to donors or prospects on behalf of your organization. There are several ways board members can be involved with that. Thank you calls. Many of you, I'm sure, already use thank you calls as a way to involve board members in fundraising. People are really pleased to get a call from a board member as a thank you. And it's, not only a way to involve board members in fundraising, but it's a really great way to incorporate that into part of your stewardship plans. And so part of the equipping of donors for those board members for those thank you calls is to equip them to be able to respond if the donor wants to have a conversation. Equip them with questions that you want to find out about why that donor gives, etc. All right, so now we're getting closer to what we as fundraising professionals think of when we think of donor involvement or board member involvement in fundraising, and it is that making of introductions. That's the rich part of board member involvement in fundraising, because making introductions is how we, of course, bring new people and new donors into our fold, into our organization. There are several ways to do that. Of course, face-to-face are the most productive, but when that's not possible because of either timing or geography or some other reason, another form of introduction, of course, is better than no introduction. So again, equip your board members on what to say and how to make this particular ask. So when asking for a meeting, you might encourage them to say something like, I serve on the board of XYZ, and I'd like to introduce you to our executive director to bring you up to date on some plans for the future and to get your advice on a couple of critical decisions we've got to make. When can we get on your lunch calendar? So equipping your board members with phrases, not just when you're having a conversation with them, but follow up with your board member with an email that lists out some of those questions so they have the phraseology that they can use when they're trying to set up a meeting with you and a potential donor. Then when we get to the peak of the pyramid is having those board members go out on a call with you to make an ask for a major gift. And this is the critical role of a peer in the face-to-face asks. It's too much to get into today, but just to touch on this highest level of board involvement, when your board members are properly trained in asking for a gift, the results can definitely be transformative for your organization. So remember, if your board members don't know what you need from them, then you're likely not going to get it. And so this whole idea here is to plan, prepare, and equip board members to serve your organization at their highest level of involvement in fundraising. And as Kent Stroman says, we always find what we're looking for or less. So if you're asking your board members for their highest level of involvement, then typically you'll get their highest level of involvement. And what you're trying to do as you're having these conversations, of course, is to build a relationship with your board member. When you have that relationship, many times we don't have a personal relationship with board members. And so it's much harder to involve them in the fundraising process if you don't have that relationship. So having these kind of conversations, not only asking for their gift every year, which we, of course, recommend that you have this yearly conversation with the board member about their gift to the organization and making it personal, just like a donor visit. So building that relationship will really help you to involve them at their highest level. So what kinds of things can you ask board members as you're having that conversation? I have a few questions, and of course you can use these words or words that makes more sense to you. But some questions might be, what is your biggest obstacle in fundraising as a board member? You'll find out, maybe it's, I'm never in town. My work takes me out of town all the time. You just don't know what their obstacle might be. How can I support you? And again, this is where you as the fundraising professional can help support your board member, give them the tools they need to be more effective. This is a good question for when you're showing them that triangle, that chart. Sorry, that came out of nowhere. That where could they see themselves on that chart if they were fully equipped to do their best job? A few more questions. What could get in the way of their involvement? What would be the best way for us to work together? And when can they get started? So in conclusion, come at this working with board members from a mindset of opportunity. Then if you'll plan and prepare for success, you'll have a much greater opportunity for success. Ask them for their involvement in fundraising. And again, as Kent Stroman says, the results are rarely better than the plan. So make sure you have a good plan in place, and you will succeed in involving board members in fundraising. So I just wanted to talk about a couple of things that I mentioned through this talk. One of them is Toastmasters, and if any of you have public speaking as part of your work that you do, I highly recommend Toastmaster training. So this is where you can find Toastmasters, toastmasters.org. Another thing I talked about were the 7 levels of energy. This is a pretty complex little diagram of the 7 levels of energy, but if you're curious about your own energy levels and how you show up energetically, both normally and under stress, just send me an email and we can talk about doing an assessment for yourself. And I think you have this in the slides, this chart, but if you want a PDF of just this chart, just email me and I can send that to you. Then just as a reminder, at AFP, this is the title of Ken Stroman's talk, Fundraising Events and Major Gifts, How Do We Get From One to the Other? And we're having a little game that we're playing at AFP called Where's Kent? So if you'll look for Kent and find him, he has a little gift for you at AFP. So hopefully look for the guy with the tall guy with the cowboy hat and play along. And so, Stephen, at this point, I just wanted to open it up for questions and see what people are thinking.
Awesome. Very cool. Yeah, we've got about 10 minutes for questions, so if you have not sent a question in, now is the time. Kathy really knows her stuff, so anything about boards and board involvement, send it our way. And Kathy, I just want to thank you for powering through. I know you were not feeling well at all, so I really appreciate you still keeping this appointment, and hopefully there was not any permanent damage done over the last hour or so. I feel bad.
Oh, yeah, and I apologize for the coughing and hacking, but, it's just that time of year with all we love spring with the blossoms, but along with it comes allergies.
I am the same way. I was feeling it the other night too. The board pyramid, Kathy, got a lot of people asking some questions. There was one request for clarification on how does a board lend their name to those communications. I think it was the second tier on the pyramid, or the first tier, excuse me. What does that mean, lend your name to appeals? Would you mind kind of unpacking that concept for us?
Yeah, sure. So many times the board, if you're sending out a mail appeal or something like that, the board members will be listed on the side. And having the names of the board members, believe it or not, sometimes people give because of who is on the board. Another way that people lend their name to appeals is when organizations segment their donor bases and have certain appeals that they send to different segments of their donor base. Sometimes they'll have specific board members sign that appeal. So those are just a couple of ways that they lend their names to appeals. So it's a sort of a passive way of being involved in fundraising.
Makes sense. Well, we've got a lot of good questions that just came in since we've finished. Here's one from Holly. Holly's wondering how she can get her non-giving board to start giving. Looks like she was one of the people who has a board that doesn't contribute anything right now, so she's starting from scratch. What advice would you have for Holly for maybe convincing them that they should be giving, and how to ask them and approach them for that gift?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's a cultural change that will take a little time, but one of the most persuasive arguments you can use is that when you approach foundations for gifts, and many times non-giving board members want the staff to go and ask foundations for money, right? Well, foundations will look at, one of the first questions they ask is, what is your board giving like? And typically they want a 3-year history. And they also want to see the number 100%. So the size of the gift isn't necessarily that important, although they will want to see when I say they, the foundation trustees will want to see that board giving is growing from year to year, so the total amount is growing bigger from year to year. They want to see 100% of the board members are giving, because here's the thing. You're asking a foundation to invest in an organization where the board doesn't even care enough to invest in the organization. And so what they'll say is, why should we do it?
Right.
So that is one of the ways that you can start persuading your board to give. Plus, really, it doesn't give confidence in the organization if the board is not financially supportive. Why should anyone else is really the bottom line.
Absolutely makes sense. Here's one from Julie, maybe kind of along the same lines. Julie was wondering what you should do with board members who are unresponsive. Maybe they don't come to meetings or they don't answer their phone. What should you do with those people? Should you get rid of them? Should you do something that maybe makes you more of a priority? Any experience with kind of absentee board members?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so that's where your board chair, as the leader, takes the role, or maybe even if you have a development committee or some committee that works on developing the board members, is to have a conversation with that person. And, I know if they're not answering the phone, it's a little hard to have a conversation, but setting up a meeting and just say, having some of these questions come up. We notice that you're not coming to meetings. And giving them, really through that conversation, find out what kind of a priority this organization is for them, and finding out if they need to really exit off the board. Because if your bylaws state that they need to attend X number of meetings a year and they're not doing it, then that's another way to help them exit off the board, because really it's not helpful to anyone. It's not helpful to them. It's not helpful to you to have an absentee board member.
Here's a question from Kenny. Kenny's wondering what do you think is the best use of time during the development portion of board meetings? Is there anything that you should be saying to them or showing them that would really kind of get them engaged? Is that even something that you should cover? And if so, in what kind of context?
I'm not quite sure what you mean by the development portion of board meetings.
I think Kenny's referring to just maybe the fundraising update or perhaps, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So having something like a dashboard report, and just stating that first of all, have the board adopt as a goal that they will have 100% participation. Some boards will adopt a goal of a dollar amount, but then each meeting you can report, we have X number amount participating, and this is our dollar goal. And of course, don't make sure you have at least three gifts before you start telling a goal, so people don't figure out who's giving what. But that's just a little detail there. But yeah, just report at each meeting. And the other thing you can report is once we have 100% participation, then I can start doing my work, going out in the community and asking for money. So that's another way to let board members know that, I cannot ask anyone else for money until you all have given your gifts or pledges, because I want to be able to brag on my board and say 100% of my board is behind our organization. So much easier to raise money that way.
Makes sense. Here's a question from David that I thought was pretty interesting. Curious what you think is more important, board members that are well known in the community versus unknowns that maybe you can kind of train and mold in the way that you want. Do you think those sort of like celebrity board members, or at least kind of high profile, at least in the local community board members, are important, or should you look for people that truly just have a passion for the org and are kind of coachable?
Mhm. Yeah, good question. And so, when you're looking for board members, typically what we recommend is to look for the highest level person that you can. So that's one way, because for several reasons. I mean, for one is they have more connections within the community. Now, if they're not going to show up to meetings, then that's probably not a good choice. But then the second thing you're looking for in board members is that to recruit people who you see could eventually serve as chair, because that's how you're going to build a strong board. So to answer the question about high-profile community people or others, I would say probably a little bit of a mix, because you want people who have a passion for your organization, and you want people who are going to govern your organization. So, a little bit of a mix.
Makes sense. Here's a question from Jenny, and Jenny, thanks for this question, because let's be a little positive. I feel like I've been kind of a negative Nancy. How do you keep board members that are on fire and already excited for you? How do you keep them engaged so that they don't sort of decline or become stagnant? So they already love you, they're raising money. How do you kind of keep that going so that it doesn't die out?
Yeah. Well, another thing that Kent likes to say is whatever you recognize, praise, and reward, you'll get more of. So, just continuing to recognize those people and, just talk about what they're doing, because, people who volunteer typically give you more of their time and energy than people who are paid to do what they do. So a little bit of recognition and praise goes a long way.
Love it. Probably got time for maybe a couple more questions, so if you've been sitting on your hands, send them over. And I know there's a lot that are going to go unanswered, so I'm flashing Kathy's contact info here. Kathy, I assume you'll be willing to take more questions, maybe via phone number or email?
Or email, sure.
Very cool. We've had a couple of people, actually more than a few, ask about board members who are not local, so maybe they're out of state, maybe even in the country. Any advice for dealing with remote board members? Piping them in through a video call. What other ways can you kind of keep those out of state people engaged?
Yeah, and that is a challenge. And I actually worked with an organization. I was on staff with an organization with that particular issue. And you're right, Stephen. Nowadays it's a lot easier because you can get that face-to-face contact through some of the technology that we have available today. But a yearly meeting is, in my opinion, crucial to, when I say yearly face-to-face meeting, where they all are in the same room, because you've got to build those relationships, build that rapport, build that trust of how they're going to work together. And then, again, communication is just so important. So trust and communication, and then making sure that your board meetings and the things that you're asking of them are things that are that require their input and require their brain power, and that will keep them engaged in the organization, because presumably they have the passion for the organization. So just keeping them engaged, and connecting and communicating, I would say, are the keys to that.
All right, cool. Well, we're running right up against 1 o'clock, and Kathy, I kind of want to give you the last word. Any last piece of advice? What's maybe the one thing that you think people can close this webinar and do even this afternoon to kind of get started or get back on the right track?
Mm-hmm. Well, I would say just know that people who serve on boards are there because they love your organization. Most of the time. They love your organization. They want your organization to succeed. And just being able to equip them with some tools that can help will really, really help them get to that next level and really help them to support your organization in a whole new way.
All right. Well, Kathy, this was awesome. Thanks for being here, and thanks for being here while you were feeling under the weather. I really appreciate it, and looks like the chats are positive as well. So thanks so much for hanging out with us for an hour or so.
Oh, of course, Stephen. You're welcome.
And if we didn't get to your question, I apologize. The hour went by fast, but please email Kathy. She said she'd be willing to answer all of your questions. And if you're going to be in San Diego next week for AFP, look for Kathy, look for Kent, look for Bloomerang. I'll be there as well. I'd love to say hi to you. Let me know that you listen to these webinars. That always makes me fun. That's always nice to hear. We're going to keep the board theme going. Kent Stroman, which is Kathy's partner in crime, is going to be joining us 2 weeks. Actually, it's going to be 3 weeks from today. We're taking a couple weeks off because of AFP in San Fran. So register for that. He's going to talk about the intentional board. So maybe it sounds like a lot of you maybe have a little bit of dysfunctions going on in your board. So definitely register for this webinar. He's going to give you some ideas of how you can kind of turn that all around if you're already kind of in the red. If that doesn't quite tickle your fancy, we've got other webinars that you can register for out in the future. We'd love to see you again on some other Thursday coming up soon. So look for an email from me with the slides and the recording. I'll get that sent out to you this afternoon so you can review all the great information. But we'll call it a day there. Have a great rest of your afternoon. Have a good and safe weekend. And hopefully we'll talk to you again next month. Bye now.